I had a great time on Rock Your Midlife. It was such a fun conversation for me because not only was it friendly and conversational and animated with an easy back and forth, it was educated, meaning the questions that I was asked were coming from such a deep knowledge of health that it made our conversation that much more meaningful. And we are able to provide more information to the listeners than otherwise I think we would have gotten.
Welcome to the Rock Your Midlife podcast, your transformative sanctuary designed to guide you through self-discovery and provide the tools you need to find your purpose and navigate life authentically. Whether you want to optimize your health, boost your happiness, or deepen your self-love, this podcast is your ultimate toolkit. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. I am thrilled that you're here. I'm Dr. Ellen, the Midlife Whisperer, because we have such an important show for you. In this episode of Rock Your Midlife, we are joined by the esteemed Dr. John Neustadt, and he's a leading expert in the field of osteoporosis prevention and reversal, something that if you are midlife women like me, particularly if you are going through menopause, it's something that you need to know about. And did you know that osteoporosis affects millions of midlife women, making their bones fragile and more susceptible to fractures? It's a condition that sneaks up silently, but with the right knowledge and strategies, you can take control of your health. And Dr. Neustadt is going to shed light on why osteoporosis is so prevalent among midlife women and why a holistic approach is crucial for preventing and reversing the condition. We'll dive into the multifaceted nature of osteoporosis, exploring how nutrition, exercise, lifestyle choices, having a good mental health and stress management all play a vital role in maintaining strong, healthy bones. So let me formally welcome Dr. Neustadt. Welcome to Rock Your Midlife. So awesome to be here, to have you here.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And
No,
I
it's great to be here.
and I should also mention that you've also are president of Nutritional Biochemistry, Inc., and you've published more than 100 medical articles. You've written for health and wellness books, and you have your number one bestseller is Fracture Proof: Your Bones: A Comprehensive Guide to Osteoporosis. So let's get into it. So I guess my first question, when I have guests, that I know that you're a naturopath, how did you get involved in osteoporosis?
I love people's origin stories. So this is a great question. I never saw myself becoming an expert in this area. It really wasn't on my radar. But a mentor of mine, one of the founders of my medical school, Dr. Bill Mitchell, in an advanced therapeutics class, wisely said to us fourth year students, your best teachers will be your patients. If you listen close enough, they will tell you what they need. And if you're doing your job, you're going to go find out how you can help them best. I had patients starting to come into my practice. This is 2005, different things, but repeatedly, people started showing up with bone health issues, with osteoporosis or osteopenia, which is pre-osteoporosis. And my mother-in-law at the time had osteoporosis and still does. She's 93 now. I was doing all the stuff that I was taught to do. And I was testing, she was getting her bone density test done. I was ordering bone density tests for my patients. Their bone density tests results were going up. My mother-in-law's bone density tests were going up. Her medical doctor had her on Fosamax. I was working with her with nutrition and lifestyle and exercise recommendations. Everybody was happy. And then she tripped on a throw rug and broke her hip. And I thought to myself, something's wrong with this picture, because by the objective measure that almost all clinicians track, and they tell patients, you're protected, your bone density is going up, she should have been fine, and she wasn't. What I found when I started digging into the research is that almost exclusive focus on bone density is leaving patients dangerously unprotected. We've known since the 1990s, at least it's been in the research, that a bone density test predicts less than half of women with osteoporosis who will break a bone. And it's really that fracture that's the most dangerous thing about the disease. It's not the number on a test, it's whether or not you're going to break a bone. So any test is only as helpful as it is able to predict fractures. Then in 2008, a study came out. It quantified that a little bit better. And what we now know is that a bone density test only predicts 44% of women with osteoporosis who will fracture, and only 21% of men. And it is truly an epidemic out there of what's going on, especially as the population gets older. And so continuing down this rabbit hole of the research and really this going after each little thread of data that I would find, what I discovered is the overwhelming support is out there in the research for not just improving bone density, but reducing fractures using holistic approaches that are being completely or almost completely ignored in the conventional medical setting in conversations with patients.
Yeah, well, it's probably because they're not reimbursable. So, and it's also, I mean, is there any way it's not just the density of your bones. My understanding is that it's also the flexibility of your bones. So it's like you want to have bones that are like, a willow tree that can actually bend and then reform, and it's not just the thickness, the density. Is there any way
That
to measure sort of I think it's called tensile strength of your bones?
So that's exactly right. There are two major sort of ways to think about bones. There's your quantity of bone, or how much you have, and that's your bone mineral density. That's the amount of minerals you have in your bone. And then there's the quality of bones. And the quality of bones is that flexibility that you mentioned. And what gives it that flexibility is the collagen in bone. Collagen is a connective tissue. It's a protein. What a lot of people don't realize is there are about 180 to 200 different proteins in bone. And the amount of protein alone that somebody consumes can account for 2 to 4% of the bone mineral density, because those minerals bind to the collagen. It binds to that protein. It holds it in place. But if you were to dissolve all of that collagen and take all the proteins out, if you dissolve all the minerals, and you can do that by taking a chicken bone and soaking it in vinegar. You just keep changing the vinegar, do that for a few days. It'll pull all of the minerals out. What you're left with is the collagen and the other proteins, and it's flexible. Like you said, like a willow branch. You can bend it, you can drive over it with a car, you can hit it against a table. It will not break. That's the power and the strength of the collagen. There is not any test that can measure the quantity of collagen. There are some tests like the CTX test or C-telopeptide test that can tell you if you're having collagen breaking down. But its value clinically in actually predicting fractures is quite weak. It's one piece that you can control, but unfortunately, there isn't one test, end all be all test, that is something that is going to give somebody the definitive answer. I do like the idea of doing different types of testing to kind of piece together, get a more comprehensive picture. But ultimately, we don't have phenomenal testing that you can just take a test and say, this is your absolute risk.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned though the importance of not just the bone density, and that doesn't find everything. While we're on the topic of protein and collagen, this is something, if you're listening, most women that I work with do not get enough protein. After you hit 50, your protein needs go up. I usually tell women before 50, it's 0.8 grams per kilogram. After 50, it's 1. And I say up to say it's 1.5 grams per kilogram. So not just getting 75, 80 grams of protein every single day, but spreading it throughout the day. And I'm curious if dietary protein, and specifically taking collagen as a protein, can help with that, the tensile strength that we just talked about.
First of all, I'm so happy you mentioned that with protein, because I see that also all the time. A lot of times when I'm working with patients and they're doing, at least they seem to be doing everything correct. They're eating healthy, they're exercising, they're taking the supplements that have been shown to improve bone density and maintain strong bones, and their bone density has continued to go down repeatedly. What I find over and over, they're not consuming enough protein. And you're absolutely right. The protein needs as we get older increase right in that range that you mentioned, up to 1.5. In my book, I talk about, and I recommend 1.3 grams per protein per kilogram body weight, or approximately, if you take your weight in pounds, you multiply it by 0.6. That's the number of grams of protein you should get every day, which can be challenging, as you know, for some people. And that's where dietary supplements come in. I'm a believer that supplements should be used as the FDA intended. That is, as a supplement to a healthy diet. It can be challenging to get that amount of protein every day in food. And that's where a dietary supplement comes in. The research on collagen, type 1 collagen specifically, a lot of times it's combined. Types 1 and 3 collagen can be combined because it comes from a mammals or a bovine source. That helps reduce CTX, so that marker of collagen breakdown can be reduced in people who supplement with collagen. Also, though, it has been shown to promote and improve healthy bone density. So that's great. There are no fracture outcomes clinical trials on it, but it's also been shown to be very healthy and helpful for skin health, reducing the visible lines of wrinkles, or visibility of wrinkles, and increasing skin plumpness and skin hydration, also improving joint health, because collagen is not just in your bones, it's throughout your body. And in fact, the research has shown an association between thinning skin and osteoporosis. So there's collagen in your skin. It's what gives that elasticity, that plumpness to your skin. It holds water for hydration. And as people get older, if your skin is thinning, which often happens as we age, you also may be having that could be a sign that you're having bone loss as well, because if you're losing collagen in your skin, you may also be losing it in your bone. So collagen supplementing with collagen powder can be incredibly helpful, and other protein powders as well.
Yeah, I do that. I put it in my smoothie. We have a beautiful garden in the backyard. My man is a master gardener, and so more kale. I could feed the whole neighborhood with all the kale we have. So, and that's also obviously great for the calcium that's in kale. And I just take my kale, take my blueberries. I use collagen protein, throw it in my smoothie. I get 20 grams of protein. It's pretty much what I do every day, and it tastes pretty good. I think it's also the best protein. I'm a breast cancer survivor, so it's also the best protein in terms of keeping the cancer at bay, so as well. So I think it's a really great protein. They sell it at Costco. They sell it, in your health food store. It's not hard to find. So that's a
Yep.
fantastic, collagen is the most abundant protein in the human body. So it's
And
a
I
great way to.
created a collagen powder specifically for bone and joints through my
Uh-huh.
company at mbihealth.com. People can check that out. And we with that product specifically, it targets that type 1 collagen. But I do want to mention, because you talk about collagen as a protein supplement. So technically, it cannot be marketed as a protein powder or protein dietary supplement because it's not a complete protein. It
Right.
doesn't have all the essential amino acids in it. So I want to make sure that people aren't confused by that and think that they can just take collagen, because ideally, again, it's part of a larger diet where you're getting all the other amino acids as well,
Right.
but it's not technically a protein powder.
That's true. That is very true, but it's I know I had that when I first picked it up, I was like, what? It didn't have the same protein grams as like a whey protein powder. But if you're
Correct.
eating getting your protein from other sources throughout the day, you should be absolutely
Exactly,
fine.
you're covered, and I think that that's an important part of this piece, and the mindset that I've had patients that I talk to, that they're so focused on what one food should I eat, but it's really your overall pattern. It's your dietary pattern that's the most important. And if you're eating a healthy dietary pattern, you don't have to worry that you're getting all the essential amino acids. They're
Right.
just going to be there.
But you do have to, I know for myself and my clients, they definitely have to focus on, I usually tell people 20 to 25 grams of protein at every meal, and then another 10 to 15 at every snack, just to make sure that you're getting
Yep,
enough protein
love it.
throughout the day. And I know that you're an advocate. I listened to some of your interviews. People, it's the Mediterranean diet. It's a whole food, plant-based diet. There's no need to go on any of the crazy diets that are out there. You just want to eat more
Yep.
plants, get enough protein. Don't eat anything that your grandmother would have eaten, and you'll be good. We don't need to go on crazy diets, but that's also really great for bone because you're getting the calcium from the plants. So let's talk a little bit about, so we talked a little bit about diagnosis. So is there anything people can do? You said the collagen test, the bone density test, other things people can do. So how specifically in your practice do you diagnose osteoporosis?
So osteoporosis, the gold standard for diagnosing osteoporosis is with a bone density test. Unfortunately, the vast majority of people who are eligible for bone density testing are not getting it done. So you're likely going to have to ask for it. The US Preventative Services Task Force don't even recommend women below 65 get tested unless they're postmenopausal. And I'm a believer, though, that around perimenopause, I want to see a baseline bone density test.
Mhm.
And then the Bone Health and Osteoporosis Foundation, of which I'm on the corporate advisory roundtable, we recommend that anyone 50 or older, man or woman, who breaks a bone, they should get tested with a bone density test, because oftentimes a fracture is the first symptom that somebody has a problem. It's asymptomatic. You don't feel anything necessarily until suddenly you break something. And so and the US Preventative Services 10 men get tested. So I think that until, I believe, maybe 70 years old. But regardless, most people aren't getting tested. Now that's the gold standard, but it can be diagnosed clinically. There's more of a bit of a trend and a movement sort of in that direction. If you do break a bone, if you have some other things, positive with other tests, that it doesn't have to be a bone density test. There are other technologies available now, like an MRI or CT scans, ultrasound. Um, so it really depends, but the gold standard still is that bone density test.
And I've had it done. It's simple, it's easy, it doesn't hurt. It doesn't take very long. You just lie on a table and they just do a scan. I think it's an X-ray. It's really not, but it's good to have that. And I guess I'd want to talk a little bit about, there's a lot of fear around it. I mean, I just spoke before when we were out there. I was saying I just spoke at an osteoporosis support group about grief and about stress around the disease. I think a lot of people, and we're getting a lot of, like, I'll open up my feed on Instagram and there's all of this fear around it. But I think we have to really be the boss of our bodies and say, okay, so if it is low, then that's information that I can use to build more bone. But is there anything that you can recommend in terms of, do you see a lot of fear of particularly women, because there's so much out there to create fear around osteoporosis?
It is a scary diagnosis, and I don't want to minimize that. It's a wake-up call for a lot of people. And because if you're a woman 45 years or older, your risk for getting an osteoporosis fracture is equal to your combined risk of breast, uterine, and ovarian cancer. Every 30 seconds, someone somewhere in the world is breaking a bone with osteoporosis. Globally, it's second only to cardiovascular disease as a health problem. And if you're a woman who breaks your hip with osteoporosis, there's up to a 36% chance here. And of those who survive, about 50% never regain their pre-fracture level of mobility and pain-free lifestyle. So yes, it is scary. It is frightening, because a lot of people also are not sure what to do, and they're afraid of the medications, and they've had a parent or a grandparent, in the past who's had it, who broke a hip, and it was the first sort of event that then started this downhill spiral that ultimately led to, their death, and definitely decreased quality of life. So what I like to do is, first of all, I have them take a deep breath. Let's just take a deep breath. Let's put the bone density test in its proper context. And I talk to them then about exactly how I spoke with you before, that a bone density test only predicts 44% of women with osteoporosis who will break a bone, and only 21% of men. It's one piece of the puzzle, but it's a small piece. It's not as important as other people think. And then I begin to share with them what we do know that they can do, how they can control their future, how they can reduce fracture risk, how they can rebuild bone. What we do know is that 95% of fractures occur because somebody falls. So what can we do to prevent falls? Increase balance, increase strength, fracture proof your home by removing things that you could trip over, or repairing loose steps, those sorts of environmental hazards that may exist for people. And then what does the research show in terms of the dietary pattern? You mentioned the Mediterranean diet. People who follow that can have up to, the research shows, a 21% reduction in hip fracture risk and a 20% reduction in osteoporosis. So diet is definitely part of it. Exercise is part of it. Sleep is an important component to it. People who aren't sleeping enough, less than 6 hours a night, insomnia really becomes a big problem as people get older. That also increases